Some people spend their entire lives chasing wealth, chasing success, chasing opportunities, and never understanding why those things keep slipping through their fingers. They work harder. They hustle longer. They read the books, they watch the videos, they take the courses. And still, somehow, the life they want stays just out of reach. And here's the truth that most people never want to face: the problem was never their effort. The problem was never their intelligence. The problem wasn't even their circumstances. The problem was who they were becoming, or more honestly, who they were failing to become. Because Jim Rohn said something that changed the way I understood everything about success, wealth, and the invisible laws that govern a human life. He said this: success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. Read that again slowly. Not pursue. Attract. And that one word, attract, holds the entire secret that most people spend decades missing. Think about this. A magnet does not run after metal. It does not beg. It does not chase. It simply becomes what it is, and the metal moves toward it. That is the principle. That is the law. And it is as true for human beings as it is for physics. When you become the right kind of person, when your values are right, your discipline is right, your thinking is right, your standards are right, success does not hide from you. It finds you. Opportunities begin to appear in conversations, in chance meetings, and ideas that come to you at 2 in the morning. Wealth starts to move in your direction, not because you chased it, but because you became the kind of person it naturally flows toward. That is what this is about. Not tactics. Not shortcuts. Not hacks. It is about becoming. Let me tell you about a man I once heard of, and I want you to listen carefully because you might recognize a little of yourself in him. He was in his mid-30s, frustrated, tired, and convinced that the world was somehow against him. He had tried businesses that failed. He had worked jobs that went nowhere. He had watched people around him succeed and genuinely could not understand what they had that he didn't. He was not lazy. He worked constantly. But every few years, he would find himself back at the same starting point, broke, confused, and bitter. One day, a mentor sat across from him and asked a question that he said he never forgot. The mentor said, "Tell me about the last 5 years of your life. Not what happened to you. Tell me about you, how you've changed, what you've learned, who you've become." And the man went silent. Because when he thought about it honestly, he realized something devastating. He had not changed at all. He was the exact same person he had been 5 years ago. Same reactions. Same fears. Same limiting beliefs. Same conversations in his head. He had been busy surviving, but he had not been growing. And you cannot attract a different life without first becoming a different person. That is the truth. You see, most people make the fundamental mistake of treating success like a destination they need to travel to. So they focus entirely on the road, the strategies, the steps, the moves. They calculate and plan and research. And that is not wrong. Planning matters. Strategy matters. But here is what they miss. The road changes based on who is walking it. The same opportunity lands differently in the hands of someone who is disciplined versus someone who is not. The same conversation produces a different result when it happens with someone who has built genuine value in themselves. The same door opens differently for someone who has cultivated the right character. Jim Rohn understood this. He spent his life teaching it. He said, "Work harder on yourself than you do on your job." And I want you to sit with that for a moment. Harder on yourself than on your job. Not instead of your job. Harder. Because when you become more, you naturally produce more, attract more, and keep more. The work on yourself is not separate from the work on your wealth. It is the foundation of it. Ask yourself something right now, and be honest, because honesty is the beginning of every real change. Who have you been becoming for the last 3 years? Not what have you been doing. Who have you been becoming? Have you been sharpening your thinking? Have you been expanding your understanding of how the world works? Have you been working on your discipline, the quiet private discipline that no one sees, the kind where you do what you said you were going to do even when no one is watching? Have you been improving your relationship with time, with money, with other people? Have you been examining the beliefs you carry, the ones that were put inside you before you even had a choice, and asking whether they still serve you or whether they are quietly destroying your future? These are the questions that matter. Because everything you attract into your life right now is a reflection of what you have been becoming. That is not a judgment. It is a law. And laws do not care about feelings. They simply operate. There was a young woman, she was perhaps 26, 27, who came from a background where money was always scarce and always feared. Her parents were good people, hard-working people, but they carried this quiet belief that money was dangerous, that rich people were somehow corrupt, that wanting more was a sign of greed. She absorbed all of that. She did not realize she had absorbed it. That is the thing about the beliefs we inherit. They do not come with a label. They just become part of how we see the world. So this young woman worked hard, she earned decent money, and then, almost without knowing why, she would sabotage it. She would spend impulsively. She would make careless financial decisions. She would avoid the discomfort of really sitting down and looking at her finances. She was, deep inside, unconsciously pushing money away, because she had been programmed to believe it was something to be afraid of, not something to be attracted. The transformation did not happen when she found a better job. It happened when she began to examine and dismantle the story she had been carrying about what money meant. When she changed her inner relationship with wealth, her outer reality began to shift. Not overnight, but steadily, unmistakably. She became someone money trusted. Now understand this, this is where most people miss the depth of what Rohn was teaching. When he talked about becoming, he was not talking about becoming someone fake. He was not talking about pretending. He was not talking about affirmations on a mirror that have no substance behind them. He was talking about genuine internal transformation. He was talking about building real virtues, and that word, virtues, sounds old-fashioned, but what it means is deeply practical. Discipline is a virtue. It means doing the necessary thing regardless of how you feel. And people who build genuine discipline attract opportunities because they can actually execute. Reliability is a virtue. It means doing what you say you will do. And people who are genuinely reliable attract trust, and trust is the currency of business, of relationships, of life itself. Curiosity is a virtue. It means staying hungry to understand more, to see more, to grow more. And people who stay curious attract ideas and insights that other people simply never notice. These are not soft, philosophical concepts. These are the invisible architecture of an attractive life. Think about it this way. Have you ever met someone, maybe at a gathering, maybe in passing, and there was just something about them? Something you could not quite name? They weren't necessarily the most physically impressive person in the room. They weren't performing or showing off. But there was a quality to them, a kind of gravity, a kind of stillness, a kind of quiet confidence that made you naturally want to be around them, to do business with them, to trust them. What you were feeling was not luck or charisma in the shallow sense. What you were sensing was the accumulated result of who that person had been becoming over years. Their internal development was radiating outward. Success, wealth, and opportunity are not just practical, they are energetic. They move toward certain kinds of people and away from others. And you can become one of those certain kinds of people. That is the promise inside Rohn's teaching. Let me ask you something else. How many years have you spent waiting for conditions to improve before you start growing? Waiting until you have more money to start being financially disciplined, not realizing that the discipline has to come before the money, not after. Waiting until your life is less chaotic to start reading, to start learning, to start building your mind, not realizing that building your mind is what reduces the chaos. Waiting until you feel motivated to take the action, not realizing that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Most people have it completely backward. They are waiting for the external world to change so they can start the internal work. But the entire law is built on the opposite sequence. The internal work comes first. Always first. The external world responds to who you are becoming. It does not lead it. It follows it. There is a businessman I want to tell you about, a man who had built and lost 2 companies by the time he was 40. He had the ideas. He had the ambition. What he lacked, though he would not have admitted it at the time, was character in certain areas that really mattered. He was brilliant with strategy but terrible with patience. He would chase the quick opportunity and miss the slow-building one that would have been worth 10 times more. He was charming with new relationships but inconsistent in maintaining them, so he had a wide circle that was shallow rather than a deep circle that was loyal. He was good at starting, but he hated the grind of finishing. And because of these gaps in his character, and I want you to hear this clearly, these were not weaknesses he was born with. These were habits of being that he had never examined, never challenged, never worked to change. When he finally understood that the business problems were not business problems, when he finally saw that they were character problems, everything changed. He spent 2 years working on himself the way he had previously worked on his business plan. He built patience deliberately. He rebuilt his relationships with consistency rather than charm. He finished things. And the 3rd business he built is still standing today. Same man. Different identity. Different results. Here's what I want you to really understand. Jim Rohn used to say, "Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better." That sentence is so clean, so precise, that people hear it and nod and then immediately go back to wishing it were easier. Because wishing it were easier is comfortable. Wishing you were better requires something. It requires the admission that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is, at least in large part, a gap between who you currently are and who you need to become. That is not always easy to look at. Our egos resist it. Our pride resists it. We would rather blame the economy, the timing, the people around us, the family we were born into, the country we live in. And yes, some of those things are real obstacles. Life is not perfectly fair. But here is what is also true. Within whatever circumstances you are in, there is a version of you that gets more out of those circumstances. There is a version of you that attracts more, builds more, keeps more. And that version is not a fantasy. That version is who you become when you commit, seriously, to personal growth. You see, wealth is not just money. And this is something that shallow thinking misses entirely. Wealth is a full category of human experience. It is financial abundance, yes, but it is also richness of relationships, depth of purpose, clarity of vision, peace of mind, freedom of time. And all of it, flows toward a certain kind of human character and away from another. The person who is consistently envious never attracts true abundance because their mind is always measuring what others have rather than building what they could create. The person who is chronically impatient destroys opportunities because they abandon the work before it compounds into results. The person who lacks genuine honesty, with others and with themselves, builds on false foundations that eventually collapse. This is not moralizing. This is mechanics. The character determines the outcome. Rohn understood this so deeply because he had lived both sides. He had been broke and struggling before he found his mentor Earl Shoaff, who said something to him that rewired his entire understanding of life. Shoaff said, "Jim, if you want to have more, you have to become more." And Rohn carried that for the rest of his extraordinary life. Ask yourself right now, honestly, what kind of person are you becoming in the quiet hours? Not in the moments when people are watching. Not in the highlights. In the quiet hours. When no one is checking. When you could cut the corner and no one would know. When you could put off the reading, skip the reflection, avoid the uncomfortable truth about where you are. What do you do in those moments? Because those moments, accumulated over months and years, are what build or destroy the person you are becoming. And the person you are becoming is the magnet. The magnet determines what you attract. The work in the quiet hours is the most important work you will ever do. Now let me come to something very gentle but very important. Most people reading this understand intellectually that growth matters. But understanding is not transformation. I have seen people read every book and change nothing. I have seen people listen to years of wisdom and remain exactly the same. The gap between knowing and becoming is a gap that only one thing can close, and that is genuine decision. Not motivation. Not inspiration. Not a good feeling that fades by Thursday. A real, deep, quiet decision that this is the direction of your life from this point forward. A decision that says, regardless of how slow it goes, regardless of how uncomfortable it gets, regardless of whether anyone else sees it or validates it, I am going to become someone worthy of the life I want. That decision, made honestly and held over time, is the beginning of everything. There is a version of you that has been waiting. Waiting for the right time, the right sign, the right feeling. Waiting for someone to come along and give you permission or belief or certainty. That version of you has been carrying the same fears for years, the same doubts, the same patterns that keep producing the same results. You know this. You have felt it in the quiet moments when the phone is down and the noise is gone and it is just you and the truth. And then there is another version of you. The version that stops waiting. The version that decides, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet seriousness, that the work of becoming starts today and does not stop. The version that wakes up and asks, who am I becoming, rather than what am I getting? The version that chooses character over comfort, growth over ease, depth over distraction. That version attracts differently. That version walks through rooms differently. That version has conversations that open doors. That version sits with opportunities and knows what to do with them because they have been building the internal capacity to handle them. Wealth moves toward character. Success follows growth. Opportunities find the person who has made themselves ready. This is not luck. This is not mystery. This is the law that Jim Rohn gave his life to teaching, that the outside of your life is a reflection of the inside of your life, and to change one, you must change the other. The person you are becoming is the most important project you will ever work on. Everything else depends on it. Everything.